We started long ago. Believed in something, we don't let it go. A little faith when you're on the road. We know we're off to a good start. Let's go, let's get lost in the stream. You and I make the sweetest of teams. Let's go, let's get lost in a dream. We are the best that the world has ever seen. The beauty of the journey is not knowing how to get there, but we'll get there. So let the wind sweep on your face and mess up your hair, 'cause we'll get there, we'll get there. The beauty of the journey is not knowing how to get there, but we'll get there. So let the wind sweep on your face and mess up your hair, 'cause we'll get there, we'll get there.
Welcome, everyone. As you can see, I am not your host this week, or I am your host this week, but I'm not Carl Evans. I'd like to welcome everyone to another amazing episode of Conversations Cafe. And I am Rick Osowski, founder and host of the Anthologies of Hope podcast, and Hope for the Day surrogate and member of the Conversations Cafe production team. So you may have heard my name at the end of episodes, or if you've listened to our Anthologies of Hope podcast. I'll be filling in for Carl this week as we continue the conversation on tonight's episode on the family, parenting in 2020, part 2. If you missed last week or you want to tune in again, you can head over to Hope for the Day's Facebook and YouTube page after tonight's episode to catch up. Last week, my wonderful wife, Amanda, hosted a panel of moms from around the Hope for the Day family that included staff, surrogates, and agents of impact, some of which you'll see some more agents of impact and surrogates tonight. This week, we have a panel of dads and families to dive in even further to some of the topics that we covered last week, and we'll be looking forward to that conversation. Through some amazing planning and coordination, you can also tune into this week's Anthologies of Hope long form interview, the audio podcast that I release weekly on Wednesdays, where I sat down with my wife Amanda to discuss the first 10 months of our parenting experience. The only catch is that interview was recorded over 6 months ago, back in March, prior to COVID. So it's a great juxtaposition for everything we cover here tonight and that Amanda and crew covered last week from the other point of view. That interview can be found at anthologiesofhope.com or wherever you subscribe to podcasts by searching for Anthologies of Hope. If you missed out last week, we can recap everything here so that you know what you have in store for you. And then obviously you would have more to go back and listen to either the audio, which will come out tomorrow on Anthologies of Hope, or if you enjoy the video, you can hit up Facebook and YouTube, as I mentioned before. But 2020 has been a roller coaster of a year for all of us so far, and one that no one could have anticipated. So with the stress, surprises, detours, and cancellations around every turn, it's been a difficult year for everyone. even more so for those of us who are parents, as we've navigated initial cancellations and closures of school and childcare due to COVID, racial justice, police brutality, the stress and anxiety that comes with any of the back to school seasons regularly, as well as the welcoming new members to your households. So with that, this panel of parents we have here tonight will be sharing personally what 2020 has been like for them as a parent, and hopefully what they're looking forward to in 2021 to help get us past what we're necessarily fighting at this time. So I will bring in our guests and make sure we can hear them and see them and let everybody introduce themselves. Then we'll jump into everything so we can make sure that we have everybody on board and we can jump right into it. So first up, we've got Trevor Rose Hamblin, who is head brewer and co-founder of Old Irving Brewing Company. Let me go ahead, bring him in. He is a Hope for the Day surrogate and a member of the 86 The Silence. Where are we going?
There you go. Hey.
There we go. Howdy. And he's a member of our 86 The Silence variant. And over the course of the summer, you may have seen a few appearances of him here with his baby boy Griff, who's co-piloting with him tonight as well. So you can say hi there.
Hey guys, how's it going? Me and Griff hanging out.
Nice. I've got a little picture-in-picture view here, so I can see him down there. Even on my screen is kind of blocked up here. So he's definitely he's all engaged tonight. So it's been awesome to see him grow up over the summer.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up, we have Frank Reichert, who is an operations manager at GlidePath Solutions and also a member of Hope for the Day's Project Red Team. Frank is also a father to a 20-year-old son who they recently dropped off at Texas A&M University for his sophomore year. So let me go ahead and bring in Frank's video and we can unmute Frank. There's Frank's video. We can see you and we should be able to hear you.
Well, yeah, excellent. Thanks, Rick. It's good to be here today and looking forward to the whole podcast.
And then we'll also pivot to some groups of partners joining us tonight. So first we have Doug and Mary Mandrala, who are Hope for the Day agents of impact and parents to children ranging in ages from 25 to 33. And their oldest son would have been 38 this year. Well, they also have 4 grandchildren ranging in ages from 3 to 6. So that's a full house and lots of personality as we were talking in pre-show. So we can hear you. We should be able to see you momentarily once your video comes on.
Hey, there we are.
We also have a 15-year-old grandson.
Excellent. Okay, I missed that. Sorry.
That's okay.
And then finally rounding out the crew tonight is Jimmy and Tina Krantz, more amazing agents of impact and parents to a 21-year-old son, and their daughter would have been 23 years old this year. So let me go ahead and turn their video on and unmute them. And looking at picture-in-picture, we should have a full house. Excellent. And if you haven't heard, you may have heard my daughter who likes to cosplay as a pterodactyl in the background. So that'll be coming in off and on as she's screaming and about going to bedtime. But thank you everyone for joining us as we go through and you're talking. I may throw up some of the cut-in cards that we have for your credentials and some of the advertising that we had for the episode. But I really just want to jump into the core of what the group talked about last week, as well as what we can continue to talk about this week, because there's so much pressure on all of us just to get through every day. And as parents, we're then leading a family, leading a household, and it feels like it compounds it. So we'll open this up to the floor to kind of kick it off, but then we can bounce around and see where it goes. And depending on the ages that we walk through for some of the folks there, I don't know how much schooling Griff is doing currently, but the rest of the folks may have some school age questions and conversation and some things like that. But we'll kind of bifurcate there once we get to some of those questions. But for anyone that wants to kind of jump in and take the floor on this answer, how has 2020 changed your relationship with your partner? How has 2020 changed your relationship with your kids, for better, for worse, or just different at all?
I would have to say 2020 has been just an incredibly difficult year all the way around. Between work and, all the things that you have to do at work to stay safe, because I'm in an office that I'm there every day. To not being able to do the type of outreach that we do. We work with a lot of young teenagers and young adults, and because of COVID, our means, which is music, is gone. So it's a really big change for me, especially because I don't have the time to be the social media queen, as where I could talk to 400 people in an evening at a concert. I don't have time to talk to 400 people on the internet. So it's just very different. I have to really be more honed in and watching who may be struggling or who may need some advice, to get that, to make sure that no one's slipping through the cracks.
That's
But
a
with
good point.
FaceTime and internet, Instagram Live, we're being able to communicate with a lot of our family, our children, and spend time checking up on them. Hey, how you doing? Visual, our friends all over the country that we miss, that we normally see through music, we will do FaceTime with. And it's been so important to spend that 3, 5, 10 minutes with someone face to face, even though we couldn't, in person, but still the communication has been there. And it's always been good to spend time to talk about matters and your health and whatnot, especially the mental health with everybody.
So, I mean, it's great you're able to find at least some way to do that, where, like you said, you didn't have that person-to-person connection that you had going to shows,
Yeah.
but now you're able to find some alternative avenue to be
Just
able
no
to keep
hugs.
that up. Yeah.
Just no hugs. It's kind of strange because I don't know. It's just kind of, I really miss personal interaction with people.
I'll second that.
Yeah. I'm a big hugger. So it's really difficult.
Tina and Jimmy, did you guys have any comments there?
Absolutely. I was going to say 2020, it started off, as just kind of a unique experience. And I enjoyed the time at home for a while, snuggling with, we have 5 dogs and a little farm here. We've got a couple of goats and horses. And so I was enjoying the few weeks at home until it kind of turned into a month-to-month pandemic. And, we personally know some people who've been affected and even passed away from the virus.
Sorry to hear that.
We also have a foundation in our daughter's name, and we usually do an annual 5K, which brings in anywhere between 500 and 800 people. And we had to go ahead and do that virtually this year, which was a very different experience, very unique, but a very cool way yet to bring together a large group of people in the name of mental health awareness and suicide prevention.
What's the name of the foundation?
Our foundation's name is the Issa Kranz Foundation. Issa was our daughter. Issa was short for Isabella. And so she passed away 7.5 years ago. She was 15 years old. So our logo is a unicorn with a rainbow, and it was just a doodle we found in one of her high school notebooks, and it's kind of a funny story to see people walking around our community with unicorn T-shirts everywhere, and it's really amazing the support we get from our community here. We live in a small town in northern Illinois. And it's pretty fun to walk around and see the unicorn T-shirts everywhere.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's been really different. I'm amazed at how this pandemic really has touched everything, like Mary was saying, from work to personal lives to community events. Jimmy and I both work outside the house. Jimmy hasn't missed a day from work. We were closed. I work at a therapeutic horseback riding farm.
No.
It's called Mainstay Therapeutic Farm. And we do different programming with people with disabilities and also mental health issues. And we were closed down for several months, but we're back up and running in a limited capacity right now. You want to add anything, Ben?
Well, and a couple of other things that we do, we're involved as facilitators for support groups to help people who've lost loved ones to suicide. So we do a group together where we facilitate together for a co-ed group, and then I facilitate a men's group. And whereas the organization that runs the co-ed group that we do on a monthly basis, we haven't been able to meet since March, and so they do it virtually, which is a little different. When you're used to, Mary, you talk about, loving the hugs. We're used to being able to sit together in a group, in a room, and we'll have 10 12 people together in a group every month. And now you're doing it online, and we still get probably 8 or so people that are coming online, but it's just different. It's different to be able
Definitely.
to get that way. But my men's group, we meet, rather than every month, we meet every other month. And we didn't do a group in March, but then we did do one in June, and then we did another one in no, I guess it's off, because we've had 3 groups, and we've met in person, because the facility that we meet at has allowed us to get back together since July. And that's been it's interesting to do the one group that we do online, and then the men's group we do it together. And we spread the chairs out further, everybody wears a mask, we have hand sanitizer, and so we're able to do the group, and it's nice to be able to meet together. So it's been interesting having it both ways, in the sense that where we're doing stuff online, but then also being able to, we just try to be really smart and social distance and wear the masks. Yep. and that's worked also.
It's good that you're able to have some sense of normalcy and regularity there. So
yeah, especially when
of
support things, so.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. For support, that's where you can definitely see the juxtaposition between remote support and in-person support, and how it can impact you differently. So that's what perfect timing there, Trevor, because I was going to throw to you next, based off of your co-pilot's age there, that the timing of 2020 has been really interesting to bring Griff into the world, and the timing of when COVID started to hit North America, when all the shutdowns started happening, and then just kind of the arrival there. So you and your wife were due for a change to begin with, and then kind of 2020 kept throwing curveballs. So how is it what was that experience like first, and then how did you guys adapt to
that? Thanks for asking. And it's awesome to hear all about you guys. Yeah, this is Griffin. So 2020, not so bad. Not all bad, I should say. Terrible, not all bad. When the lockdown first hit in Chicago, I own a brewery. I'm part owner of a brewery, and that was shocking, obviously. And me and my wife, when we'd look at other families that would come into the pub, we'd always look at them and be like, hey, look, they got a little baby and they're going out and they're having fun and they're doing their thing, like we can do that too when we have a baby. And we were really looking forward to sharing this moment with our family, our friends, and my colleagues, and everything like that. And then obviously once COVID hit, we kind of switched our model at the brewery to where we were only doing pickup. So there was no one inside at all. And so I had kind of moved to nights, and I was, running food out to people's cars. So Amanda, pregnant, is staying home until that later time at night, where usually I'm home about 6 o'clock. So, that was challenging on a relationship, because generally she'd go to bed pretty early. I'd pretty much come in, say, hey, and then we were kind of like ships passing in the night for a while there, but, super understanding. And we still made cutout time for ourselves on my days off, which were, get 2 days off a week. But during that time I got sick. And when I thought it was maybe just a simple cold or something like that, because it didn't seem that aggressive, I still quarantined in a bedroom away from her during that time. And so, she'd bring food to the door and stuff. And then at night I'd bustle into the kitchen, sanitizing every single knob on the way to cook, to take care of my dishes and clean up. And then I kind of just sat in a bed for a week and a half in total time. But after a week, I felt like I had already had something for a week. And then the week following, is when it started getting like a lot worse, and that's when I went into quarantine. And we didn't know a lot about the virus at the time. Like masks weren't a thing. The only thing we knew is like, don't touch your face, wash your hands, and stay away from people as much as you can. Keep 6 feet apart. And I was like very diligent about that. And I still ended up getting sick. And then what was really shocking was when I lost the complete sense of taste and smell. And, I make beer for a living, and that was scary as hell. But one night, about 3 weeks later, Amanda was making dinner. I could start like smelling again and tasting again, but my smell still isn't quite right. Like dairy and cheeses and things like that kind of taste rotten. I can't smell certain smells. Some smells you don't want to smell, and I don't have to smell those, which is kind of nice. So I'm kind of blessed with that gift. And then as the pandemic is carried on, I think we've had to get like really creative as new parents in terms of, first there was the baby shower. How do we, have a baby shower during a pandemic? It was literally like 8 scared friends in our apartment standing very far apart. I made food for everybody. It was originally supposed to be at the brewery in this back room, like right after lockdown happened. And that was really hard for my wife. She was really sad. And I just tried to make it as special as possible for her and invite like the core group of friends. And then you get into like summertime, like how are we going to go out and have fun? So we started taking like walks in the local parks, because we live in an apartment, so we don't have like a backyard. We have like barely a back porch, but there's a big old park nearby, and we'd go out there and we'd grab some like White Claws or beers and like some snacks, and we'd put him in his stroller, and then maybe like set up a little play area for him and bring our dog, and we just kind of sit out there and look at nature and people watch. And so we were able to do that. And then more recently, we found some cabins in Michigan we were able to get away to, and you're pretty separated from people there. You can go out and grab some local beer, some sausages, and cook out. So we've just had to get a little more creative this year, but we still find ourselves missing our friends because we've really limited that amount of time and touch, and it's so it's a major bummer. My parents didn't get to meet him until he was already aged along pretty well, because I was so scared of, we're in the danger zone here in Chicago, and my folks live in the middle of nowhere in Ypsilanti, Michigan, out in the middle of the country. And I'm like, and they really want to meet the baby. I'm like, you have to understand, I'm a danger to you, not the other way around, and so yeah, it's been bizarre, but we're trying our best.
Yeah, that's what my Amanda and your Amanda can definitely commiserate over some unfortunate events that are out of your control, kind of wrecking some of the big moments for showers and some other things related to that. So but glad to hear you're on the mend and bouncing back. So we'll go to Frank now, and there's a little bit of a kind of transition from some of the music before and what Mary was talking about, where Frank, you and your wife are big cruise goers and concert goers too, correct? So that's something that you definitely don't have the ability to do now. And then also jump into how 2020 has affected the parenting there with dropping your son off at college.
Yeah, so the music is definitely a big hit on our time. We would probably go to a concert a week, if not more. We do the festivals, like 3 to 4 festivals a year. So the good thing is for 2020, we got to go to one festival in Punta Cana for our anniversary, which was in February before everything locked down. So we got crazy lucky. But just like Trevor, I definitely got sick February, just before we went on the trip, and I was sick for about a month afterwards. My wife thinks it was COVID, but who knows? But I was actually in Guam in January and flew through Japan in January to come back before anybody even knew anything, right? Like, I mean, at least I didn't know. So it was like all risky in that whole area. And next thing I know, it's like, well, if you came from Japan in the last month,
you didn't see the camera.
It could be bad. So needless to say, same as Trevor, I was locked down. My wife locked me down, stayed away from my niece and nephew and my mother-in-law who lived right around us. And, had a little bit of a rough time. And the same thing with the
It's him.
Sorry, did I lose you guys?
You got muted there for a second.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm from New Jersey. I'm a big hugger. So not seeing my niece and nephew and my and my mother-in-law and things like that, we that was painful. And then for my son at 20 years old, he was looking at it like it was the end of the world, because he's 20 years old. He's ready to have a great summer. He's about to move to Texas. do all these great things and have all these great plans, and then all of a sudden now you can't do it. So that brought some tension into the house because, you know, at 20 years old, you don't know that there's still a lot ahead of you. Like, get through it and, you know, move on, and sort of like that. So that brought some tension into the house to where he was like, you know, my summer's messed up, and, you know, how am I going to do school next year, and all those stresses. We finally got through it, got him to Texas, got him into school. He's understanding a bit more, and you know, my brother helps out a lot too to kind of put him in a better place, because he's living with my brother right now since they're doing school remotely. So he's in San Antonio, still meeting people, but remotely doing school at my brother's place in San Antonio. So, and you know, my brother's in the Air Force. He's a pilot, so he's, you know, good role model, loves Dre, and you know, was kicking ass down there. So
It's good to hear. So
you know, at 20 years old, it's like, it's not a baby. It's not like a grandchild or something where you're being extra careful for him. It's like, don't get arrested. You know,
there's a
you know,
a certain
like,
level of
it's a different mindset. It's like, all right, what do you need from me anymore? Like, you know, I love you. You're still my son, but, you know, you got to fix it yourself now. So it's a little bit of a less stress on me, I guess. If I had a son or somebody that was in elementary school or high school or anything, I'd be freaking out right now. I wouldn't know what to do. But you know, luckily, I got a sort of like an adult out there handling themselves, so it was a little bit easier. But I mean, I'll tell you one thing though: the 2020, me and my wife both working from home, we didn't miss a beat. I also go in, just like Mary said. I've been going into work every day, doing what I have to do, traveling a lot less. I'm usually a big traveler, but you know, staying safe, doing what we got to do. And I'd actually have to say, which is surprising, that both of us working from home probably got us a little bit closer, you know? So it didn't put a wedge in there too much to where, you know, when I was back in the Navy, she couldn't wait for me to go on my next
to
cruise.
get out.
So, but now it's, you know, now we're a little older, and it was actually, it's kind of been nice, like, you know, working from home type of thing, and doing what we got to do with each other.
Excellent. Great. So kind of touching or contrasting that is, like you were saying, your son's a little bit older, so you don't really have to worry about it. But I want to circle back for something a little bit that Trevor touched on, but then Mary, you had mentioned in some of the pre-roll as well, as far as having grandkids. How have you handled that between interacting with your kids, interacting with your grandkids, and then just precautions, or have you been able to, or have you needed to kind of just forego that, or as kind of Trevor said, with his parents kind of being the threat to them as opposed to the other way around? How have you all handled that?
Spending time with the grandkids has been unique. Our 6-year-old grandson has a problem that as soon as he gets sick, it settles in his lungs. Some kind of croup. He's in the emergency room. So we're all being really cautious. And his dad is a first responder. So for a while, no one could come into their house. It was a contract that he had with his employer that, you know, they were on 7 days, off 7 days. Just recently, probably May, we were able to start spending some time with the kids, but it's outside. We're outside and we have to be really distant. This past weekend, they were over for my birthday. That was really fun. We had a lot of fun. We did, you know, walks, but most of the time we're spending with them is outside because, you know, it's less of a risk if you're outside. And honestly, seeing my grandkids is probably more important to me mentally than it is anything. I really miss those little buggers, you know. Being a grandma is really special, and it's really hard to miss. We had a son come home from Colombia because the pandemic is a lockdown in Colombia, South America. So he suddenly appeared on our doorstep for 2.5 months. And he took the first humanitarian flight back into Colombia. Where he's employed was like, all right, time to come home. They're starting to open up things, but the pandemic there is much different than the pandemic here, and their needs are much different. And my son came home a little stressed, and he left a little bit less stressed. But he was teaching here, and all the students were Zooming.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's different. But yeah, the grandkids and the younger ones don't understand why they can't come over to Mimi and Papa's.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't understand why Papa can't come in the house and play, or Mimi can't come in the house and do stuff. you know, they understand they have to wear a mask. We tried to make it as fun as possible by, you know, having a really fun mask made for
Yeah.
them. But it's just different, and that connection is really important. Like I said, it's really important for us. Our children are grown, so this is the fun time. You know, Grandma and Grandpa, Mimi and Papa get to sugar everybody up and send them on their way, and we don't get to see them nearly as much as we used to.
But with the beauty of the internet and Snapchat
Oh yeah,
and filters and Instagram, and it's so neat to be able to communicate with grandchildren
yeah,
that way. I mean, yes, I couldn't go visit them because they were out of state or they were far away, or we couldn't see them because of the restrictions, because of their parents were working, but we were still able to communicate, at least see them and show them the weird faces that Papa made, and show them the weird little filters that I do with the hair on my face. I was like, who is that guy? And still give them me and Mary,
right.
so they could see us, that we're still here, we're still having fun, we still want to be able to interact with them. And to do that with the beauty of the internet has been a wonderful thing. And it brings us here tonight too.
So it's just been about, you know, doing the work and seeing what you can do to work around it, even though it may not be exactly the same.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to spend time. It's an important thing, not just with grandchildren, just with everyone and our friends. And so it's a different time, but you figure it out, and
Adapt.
we're all going to come out better. And we've all learned to use social media a little bit more than we did before, at least in this house. So, and our 15-year-old knows that if times are getting tough, the one person or the two people he calls is us. So we saw him this weekend. We had to give him like a condensed pep talk about sophomore year. Get your grades done or no driver's ed. Get your grades done or you get, and there's no excuse why you're not doing well in school. There are no pretty girls except your mom at home to look at. You know, so, but it was very condensed, almost to the point that it was like rushed. But you got to get your message across. And
So, I mean,
bit with them.
This week we have almost a perfect foil to the situation we had last week with the guests, where most of the guests last week were more in the range of general school age kids, or even maybe a little bit younger. Whereas we kind of have both ends of the spectrum with older kids, younger grandkids, and then younger Griff as well. So I don't imagine Griff is talking back too much, at least in terms of the pandemic at the moment. But Tina, you guys can kind of jump in here first, and then, you know, Frank touch on it a little bit, and then Mary follow up. But how has that been, kind of navigating the pandemic and the conversation with them when they're able to process information on their own, they're able to look up sources on their own, they're able to either, you know, watch the news or avoid the news on their own? And how has that been for kind of that interaction and relationship with your older children?
Yeah, you know, we're kind of, I say it all the time, we're really lucky to have Henry. You know, his losing his sister at the age of, he was 13 when she was 15. You know, I think that kind of put him on a different trajectory as far as, you know, growing up than, you know, some of his friends. And he's a pretty responsible kid. You know, he's still a kid. He enjoys having fun and whatnot, but you know, I'll say we didn't have to use any of the bail money that we had saved away, you know, for him. He didn't get into much trouble, but you know,
there's still time. He's only 21.
Yeah, maybe we should still use it, but for the most part, I would say he polices himself probably better than anybody that I know, adult or kid, because he wants to be able to be around us. He wants to be able to be healthy. You know, he makes sure that he follows the rules and social distances and just stays away from people and wears the mask. And, you know, he really appreciates being able to be with his girlfriend and be able to be with us. And he wants to make sure that he doesn't jeopardize anybody. So he's pretty responsible about that, which is interesting to see, because we see what his friends do. And wow, some of his friends are, we live here on the Wisconsin-Illinois border. And as soon as Wisconsin opened up, holy cow, all his buddies were up there. And I'm amazed that we didn't have more reports of people being sick. So,
and no judgment. I have to say, I would probably have been one of those kids that rushed up to Wisconsin if I was that age. We love all these kids. We just want everybody to be safe. But just an aside, Henry is in college down at University of North Carolina in Wilmington.
Okay.
So he does have that that distance factor that, it's to drive home, it's a 17 hours, or it's a layover with a flight.
I think we've only seen him for what, 4 weeks?
Yeah, he came home for a few
4
weeks
weeks
in the
since
summer.
March. Yeah.
But he does have one class right now that's in person. Otherwise, out of 5 classes, 4 online. So yeah, it's a different thing because we trust him. We want him, we know that he's going to do everything he can to be safe, but it's a mysterious virus. We don't know everything there is to know yet. And, there is that fear factor of it just takes one person and, it can go through a crowd pretty fast. So,
Very true.
yeah.
Very true.
Absolutely. Mary or Frank, any additional comments there for the older kids?
Well,
Go ahead, Mary.
our son, who is 31, is a firefighter paramedic. So he sees a lot of different things. And because of the pandemic, we don't see him as often. And when we do, it's kind of at a distance. He's out in the field and he's exposed to a lot of people. When our son was home this summer, he rode his bicycle to Minneapolis. And when he came back, I was like, buddy, you got to spend 14 days in that room. I don't know what you're exposed to. So it was different, all of a sudden he'd see me and up would go the mask. And we have children that work in retail. That was really strange. They're fighting with people to put on masks to stay safe. And of course, it's our youngest child who's the smallest out of everybody. And she's got to go up to people and say, no, you need to put your mask on. You have to wear it all the time. So different sides of our children's personalities are coming out because of this. Some are taking more charge. Some are being more compassionate. Some are being more careful. A lot of empathy has come out between our children. So in a way, they've learned how to handle different life situations at a younger age than they may never have had to handle before. So it's another little thing that they can put inside of their, their grown-up person toolbox.
Their toolkit.
And Mary, maybe, I'm sorry that what you're saying rings so true in the sense that they have to live it. Like they're adults, right? They're learning. We've taught them for all these years. We taught them all the rights and wrongs, but now, like, they're being forced to live that. They got to make their way themselves, and to be able to watch them do that, it's kind of fun. It's kind of exciting and terrifying in the same way, right?
Very rewarding that they're, at least in our household, that the children are growing up. It's very rewarding to see that they're not so about, oh my God, my life is over, I gotta wear this mask. More of them are about, hey, we can get through this together if we follow the rules, and I'm here for you and you're here for me, and it's not going to be something that's here forever. And yes, they were inconvenienced. Some of us had to stay home because someone in the office or someone, had COVID, or stores closed in the beginning. I was unemployed for a very large part of the beginning of the pandemic. So I had unemployment, and then I was watching those numbers rise every day. I talk about a mind mess. Wow. And then, you're worried about your kids and they're like, oh, don't worry about me. I got it all under control. It was very strange.
And nobody's hiring.
And actually, sometimes my children took better care of us mentally, about, hey, don't worry about it. You're going to find a job, or, hey, you're doing a great job. They were our cheerleaders as opposed to us being their cheerleaders for a while. And they were all very worried about us. We have pre-existing conditions that could be deadly. I mean, I'm a cancer survivor. So for a while, Doug took my keys away and wouldn't let me out of the house. Besides, I need to
Can I
find
go
a
to the
job.
store? I just want to see people.
I did. I just wanted to see people. I found myself, later on when people started wearing masks and retail started opening, I would find myself pushing a grocery cart in the store and stopping just to hear people, because none of our children live with us. So it's just the two of us. And day after day after day of all day long silence really kind of gets to you.
Mhm.
So it was great to see our kids champion it and rise to the occasion and take care of us.
That's good to
check
hear.
on us. You guys need anything? Should we get you groceries? Things like that. It's nice. It's nice to see that our hard work as a parent is paying off.
Exactly. And Frank, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I just wanted to, Tina, I'm sorry, I don't know your husband's name.
Doug?
Doug?
No.
Yeah. So something that Doug said is, when you watch your kid go through, I don't know, something like this, or to see how he handles it on his own, it is exciting, right? Because, you can only teach him so much. And until something really smacks him in the face, you don't really get to understand on how he's really, what did he take any advice that you ever gave him, like true advice? And, all of us growing up, I'm 45. So, I've had a few of those little, I don't know what you want to call it, maybe roadblocks or something that happened worldwide that you just have to sort of deal with in your life. And it's good to see that, not to say that the COVID is a good thing, but it's a tragic thing that comes into, your lives every once in a while. And you see how your son or your daughter, handle it in real world. It's kind of nice. It's like a growing pain in a way.
Yeah, Frank,
that's
that's an interesting point you make about, you teach them all this stuff and you wonder if they were listening. I can't tell you how many times Tina would hear me, sit the kids down and I'm teaching them a life lesson.
Yeah.
And she's like, they listen for about 3 minutes. And then the rest of the half an hour that you keep going on and on and on, they don't listen to that. I'm like, no, they'll remember it when they're older. And I think he actually has remembered some of it, but I think I probably wasted a lot of minutes preaching.
Same here. My son's actually told me, he's like, okay, I've heard it already 10 times. Thanks.
Well, so what I'm getting for is, with some parenting advice here, it's less of a story or a novel and more like a newspaper article. Don't bury the lead, just get to it. And
Yes.
that's the best part.
Yeah.
Kind of like blast them with the points. And once they get that glazed over look, you're done.
Yeah.
You stand
Let 'em
no
go.
chance.
So yeah, I'm taking notes, and I think Trevor is too. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm over here taking notes for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll transition to the next question. It'll be a two-parter, and you guys are kind of leading me right down the journey that I wanted to go with some of these questions anyway, so that works out well. But you touched on with the collective conversation there a little bit, but what have you all done to proactively manage your mental health throughout the pandemic? Hope for the Day is known for its proactive prevention program and managing mental health and the crises associated with it before it gets too bad or to the point of penultimate crisis. So there's a lot of work that's been done to do proactive talk and proactive physical work to kind of bring down some of those stressors. And the metaphor that Hope for the Day uses being what's shaking your bottle. So what were you all doing collectively to kind of valve out some of that pressure since the beginning of this back in, February, March, and even Frank, when you were traveling back in the January timeframe? What as a group have everyone been doing to manage some of that for yourselves and then your kids and your grandkids?
We ate a lot of food. Mary turned into a great baker.
We bought a smoker.
I put on at least 30 pounds. I had to go up on my waist size, but for the most part, the eating part was good. That took our minds off it. And then we do some walking here and there outside. Even though it was a little cold, but we would still do something active.
Yeah. When we came back from LA, we had gone out to LA twice in 10 days in January, once for the Grammys and then once for something else. That was like the extent of our fun. So we just relive. It's wonderful. I mean, every show we've gone to over the past couple of years, we've taken a picture and we have our computer, well, when it's working, rolling. So sometimes we talk about, what a great time we had. While Doug was at work, I did a lot of dance party. turn on some music and dance while I was trying to find a job, anything to do that. And believe it or not, because of the type of work we do with kids and checking in on them and making sure everybody's okay, I don't know, it kind of gives me a purpose. I always say that I do it and I talk about suicide so strongly, and I talk to the demographic that we chose so that another parent doesn't get that horrible phone call. And knowing that I'm doing something positive to people that I really care about, that have become part of my life in the last 6 years, really helps. I started writing a little bit, more journaling. Of course, I was looking for a job. That was kind of scary. And now working. So working takes up a bunch of it, but I don't know. We try to see friends, but really and truly, it's just kind of reliving the happy moments. And a little bit of exercise that endorphins really helps. Walk off that brisket I made.
And we were able to gift people all over the country
yeah.
that we miss, and we would send them little things, Mary's baked goods, stuff that I manufacture at my work, put little care packages together.
Yeah.
It's always nice to get something in the mail, and especially when it's unannounced. So it was always good to brighten someone's day.
Yeah, we did a lot of that. Probably sent out about 50 or 60 packages.
Yeah.
From all over the world, all over the United States, all over the world. I think we sent some to London as well.
Yeah.
So
in Germany.
You got to share, you got to make people smile, and their smile makes me smile. So
Nice.
Pay it forward.
Tina and Jimmy, anything down there?
Yeah, I would say I myself, I struggle with anxiety and depression, although I wasn't diagnosed until much later in my life as an adult. I definitely have had it all my life. Yeah, I've been, one to take care of my mental health and really kind of stay up on things, especially since losing my daughter. That's kind of really amplified my my symptoms. But so I'm really vigilant about, Jimmy jokes about my napping. But I am vigilant about making sure I get enough sleep. I am a better person when I can nap during the day. So those kind of things, I'm a sugar fanatic, so I try to, manage my diet, try to get sunshine. That's a big thing for me too. Getting fresh air, which is not a hard thing to do when you live on a small farm. But I think what, one of the biggest things is connection, just making sure that we maintain a connection. Like I said, Jimmy hasn't missed a day of work. He's been working through this whole thing. So that's a big part of trying to make sure that, he and I stay connected, because, we are virtually empty nesters as well. Henry has spent most of his time down in North Carolina. So making sure we're connected, making sure that we're connected to our parents, to, nieces and nephews, even, our son's friends. We'd like to kind of reach out and, even if it's a quick text or a funny picture. I use social media a lot too, just to post really either inspirational when I can think of it, or hilarious pictures, videos, saying stuff like that. My animals keep me pretty entertained, so I've chosen to share those on social media. People have been loving, watching my goats headbutt each other, or my horses running around the pasture. And that also gives me a sense of connection as well, is that, I'm connecting with people, making them, like Mary said, making them smile, brightening people's day a little bit. And, the fact that we do whatever we can. It's very limited this year, but through our foundation, we do whatever we can to help people in need, and animals as well, because our daughter was such an animal lover. So yeah, that piece, that helping piece, has been so healing for us in general. And we try to make sure that we honor that together, because we know that's, it's so important for our own healing, and to help somebody else while you're hurting is, it's unbelievable how beneficial that can be.
And you would never have thought that when the worst day of your life happened.
Never.
Last December, 21 Pilots came to the Aragon, and
Wow.
we follow that band big time. And I talked to 600 people in one day about mental health. But the whole idea of this story is one of the girls that we've met through our mentoring helped. She took the Hope for the Day cards, their
Resource
source
cards.
card, and she walked ahead of me. And she handed out bracelets because Mike gave us bracelets and whatever. And she had just recently lost somebody. And she talked to people. And she came back afterwards when everybody was starting, the line was starting to move. And she came over and she gave me this huge hug. And I went, oh, sweetheart, what's that for? You know, thank you. I love the hug. And she goes, you know what? I never understood why you do this, why you tell people about the worst day of your life. She goes, but you know what? I can go into that show and it's like talking to all those people took all that weight off my shoulders and I can enjoy this night with everyone else. And that's exactly what I do. It's very strange if people don't understand it, but by telling your story and speaking the truth to people who understand it because they're living in that moment as well, kind of makes you feel lighter, and it makes the person you're speaking to know that they have an ally who understands them. And wow, that is huge for me. That is so big for me. And I never thought I would get to that point, but we speak to thousands and thousands of young kids a year about staying alive and being kinder, because that was my son's last words in this world, was to be kinder and nicer to one another. And we do it all the time. And it really helps. It does heal. It heals so, so very much. And most people don't realize that until they have to walk in those shoes.
I'm very glad to hear the power that you have for telling your story is so positive for you. And it does help everyone else, because for me, that is the exact reason why I started my podcast, to help others share that story so that they can do that, albeit virtually. And it's a one-to-many scenario. So you don't look at each other in the eye when you're having a conversation that you may get at shows or when you're talking to people physically, but just to do that and to be able to share your story and empower yourself to help others, and then to kind of help lighten that load so it doesn't feel like you're constantly carrying that on your own.
And one of the best things is some of the kids that we've met, when they see me or when they see Doug, they run and they have to tell us about how much better they're doing in life. I took your advice and I'm seeing a therapist, or I took your advice and I came out to my parents, or I took your advice and I'm feeling so much better about it. And they run to us like children with an A on a paper. And it's like, oh, I really am making a difference in the world, one person at a time. And people don't get that. And even in COVID, you have to try to make a difference. And again, social media is a great way to do that.
Yeah, and a lot of kids tend to open up to us because we're like the parental figures.
We're the
to
fun
them,
parents.
but they're not going to tell their own parents that their own little sexual identity problems or whatever they have going on in their heads, they're not going to open up to them. So we found a lot of kids opening up to us in a lot of different ways. So
it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to have a purpose.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Frank and Trevor, anything as far as managing your valves and what's shaking your bottle through all this?
Totally. So yeah, actually, to their point, like doing something that helps people is always huge. The 2 days ago was the 4-year anniversary of my brewery. Obviously, it was a little bit different this year, having the Oktoberfest party. Not really a party, it's all weekend long. We did food specials, and I went in there, and it's pretty empty, and you're just kind of around the people that you're around at that table, and it's fine, but it didn't have the same vibe as it did before, so I was kind of sad. And then right after our anniversary day, which was the 22nd, is Hamaro Cantu's birthday. And for those of you who don't know, Hamaro Cantu is my business partner, who I was supposed to open my brewery with, that completed a suicide in that space. So, today I'm kind of like between, you have to manage your staff. My staff is always scared, they're living in a world where they're doing more policing than they're doing actually serving. And the reason that we're attracted to this industry and what we do is because we're kind of natural empaths, and we get a lot of energy from other people, and we really enjoy our service to other people. And now it's like, man, it just takes like 1 or 2 people to really knock you off. And so we found that, a lot of our staff members who used to be able to work like 40 hours a week or even more, man, they're burning out at like 30. So we've had to like really kind of change the way we do things. And of course, as a leader and I think with these cats not being able to speak their truth to a larger power and feeling powerless under whether it's, what's going on with, this big civil rights shift that we're undergoing right now, or whether it's feeling like they don't have any power because they feel like this election is just going to be a complete shit show. Most of these kids don't even like either of these candidates anyway, so they're already taking a hit for that. So their world is just kind of going to shit, and then I got to keep them together. And then so I kind of come home with like this brick on my shoulder to Griffin and Amanda, and I was actually sitting there tonight, and I was on the couch, and I felt like a lump. I was tired, and I was like, I told her, I was like, I'm supposed to do this hope for the day thing. I don't think I got it in me. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, and that's all it took. I was like, no, this always makes me feel better. Like 100% of the time, always makes me feel better to be able to talk about these things so candidly. So yeah, I would say a big valve for me are these types of things. Bike riding, like you guys were saying, going, like I got a little trail. I found a trail that I go to. It's my trail. I call it my trail. I go out
Nice.
7 miles out of my bike, 7 miles back as much as I can. I haven't been able to hit it this week, but and then a big thing that I think is really important is, like really wrapping myself up in my family. This kid, he's like a little walking, not even really crawling, a wiggling antidepressant. He's a wiggling antidepressant. And then of course my wife, who's always so supportive and loving and caring, is second to none. And then finally, learning to forgive yourself is the biggest thing, because you're gonna like try some shit while you're locked down. Like I started like an Adobe Creative Cloud. I've never used that shit, and I still haven't figured it out. And I'm paying like $20 a month for it, and I've barely done anything with it. And I've got some crafts that need to be done. And you just kind of got to be like, yo, man, you're trying. And then now, I'm kind of like preparing, for December and January and February when, I don't have a backyard. I have a little tiny back porch, and it gets cold as fuck in Chicago, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my time. And I'm like, yo, snow hikes, like, do I get like a used workout bike and put it at work for, all of us to use, like employees who are still too afraid to go to the gym? What are some things that we can do with the staff, since we're in our own little pod, to serve each other, instead of having to like, serve people who maybe we have to police all the time? Maybe we get together on like a day off, and we serve each other cocktails, or we, do some kind of creative things to make sure we're still, scratching that itch that we all have for the service community. So you're just trying to be as innovative as possible. So, yeah.
Awesome. Frank, anything to add there?
Yeah, I was gonna say when Trevor was playing with a baby, I was like, look, he's valving right now. And he was like holding him up, right? So I kind of valve a little bit differently. I grew up maybe in the stigma zone, right? So I didn't know or give appreciation to mental health maybe until I met Mike Vinopal. And so I kind of, I still deal with that stigma part. Maybe it's my military background. Rick, I think when I was on your podcast, I definitely laid into that a little bit in the past. More talking with Carl, Mike Hope for the Day. And of course, my wife, she does something like the 86 to Silence that Trevor's involved with. She does Spark, where it's the Hope for the Day / medical cannabis industry, presentation into dealing with mental health in that industry. So the more and more I become breaking out of my own stigmatized, and of course I went and got medication for anxiety and things like that. But the battle that you just have to vent on your own, or there's other people out there to help you and organizations, and it's not considered weak, which was what was drilled into my head for many years. And so being that now I can at least talk about it and get on these podcasts, I wish I could do more, but it's actually hard for me. Just like Trevor said, it's like, you're sitting there, it's like, do I really want to talk about this right now? Like, I don't want to. But one of the things Mike, sorry for my dogs, but one of the things Mike has said to me before, he's like, the best thing to do is when you feel like you don't want to do something, it's just to go do something you want to do. It doesn't even matter if it's bad for you. Just go do it. It's still going to make you, not bad for you, but like, even if it's like, you want to get up and go play a video game for 3 hours, go do it. Sorry, my dogs are going to bark for a minute, but that's what I wanted to get in there before they started going crazy.
No, that's a great segue. So thanks for that, because it kind of brought that segment home for me, because that's a lot of what I felt too, where I never really dealt with anxiety proper to some of this, but literally through the pandemic, being the one in our household who's going out and doing the food shopping, and I work remotely to begin with, and then my wife Amanda was unfortunately started her own business in January. That's a person-to-person business, and she's a postpartum doula, and that kind of got shut down with the person-to-person work. So I was really the only one going out and doing any kind of interaction at stores, and I could literally feel my anxiety starting to rise and starting to build while I was standing in an aisle with people not wearing masks or not paying attention, and just being too close and some of that. So like I then started driving to a grocery store instead of the one that's 5 minutes down the road to one that's 25 minutes up the road, just so that I knew that I could handle that task, but I could do it in a way that I would be able to actually do it successfully. And I wouldn't leave the store with a level of anxiety that would basically make my, go through the top of my head. So those are all things that do that, because just on a daily basis, we're kind of running with that fight or flight mode the entire time, and like all that adrenaline is kicked in, and you can't handle the spikes to kind of spike on top of the spikes. And even up to a couple of weeks ago, I would leave that grocery store 25 minutes from here in a relatively large footprint of a store in one of the suburbs of Chicago. But I would leave, and I would notice that once I got to the car, I was drenched in sweat. And that was just basically the anxiety of that. And so knowing that like I need to whatever I can do to kind of lessen some of this and valve out while I'm in the store, like I need to do that. So if it's taking advantage of online shopping, that's one thing. If it's taking advantage of, just Target deliveries or drive up orders, that's one thing. And one of the things kind of leaning into the way that's helped us with the household mental health has been, we've done most of the grocery ordering and pick up and normal meals Monday to Friday, and then Saturday's been our takeout day. So we've supported a number of local places that have been open and doing curbside. I mean, I'm not worried about this being a shameless plug, but it all started with knowing Trevor and the precautions they were taking there. So we were definitely going all in on the OIB takeout express early on in the pandemic, and it's in our rotation now. And so that's something that, knowing that like, okay, what can we look forward to this week? And it's like, oh, what are we going to do for takeout on Saturday? What are we going to do for some of these other things? And so that's been something where it's been a balance, because it's something we need to do, but it also kind of lessens the load when going and interacting with everyone in public, when knowing that I don't want to be the one that brings something home into my house, and then that's the kind of the downfall when it was because I wasn't paying attention at a store or something like that. And so with that, Trevor, I'll put this in the back of your mind. I need like a craft project for like about a dozen growlers, because you guys aren't taking them back, and rightly so, but they're taking up a lot of space. So I need to figure out doing something with those for the early days of what we were doing with the takeout there.
Make
If
kombucha.
Trevor refills them, I'll take them.
What's that, Frank?
If Trevor refills them, I'll take them off your hands.
Oh yeah, okay. If he refills them, they have no problem staying here.
One day we will refill them. Right now is not that day.
Excellent. So I mean, with that, the level of anxiety and some of that there is, it directly kind of contributes to that fight or flight. And then also someone mentioned, and so it was a perfect segue for the burnout. Has anybody felt that burnout just at home, just kind of sitting around, where it doesn't feel like you're doing anything, and or like Trevor, like you said, like you feel like you want to do some exploration, but then that basically just contributes to more weight on top of your shoulders. So it feels like whatever you were doing to lean into something to feel like you could do some of that valving now feels like a pressure later on. So has anybody felt that burnout and then kind of noticed that?
Yeah, definitely. For the time that I was unemployed, I'm not a napper, but boy, I took some really great naps, because you can't help but to watch the numbers grow, and it was on every channel. There was something scrolling, this many people, and I found myself just kind of shutting down, kind of like just I'd be watching TV and the next minute I'd wake up 2.5 hours later. It was like I was so overwhelmed and so scared and so helpless that I couldn't go out and do anything. I couldn't help my neighbors. I couldn't see people. I'm unemployed, so there's no money. So that was a big, huge stressor, you know, the unemployment thing, that all of a sudden I would just not do anything. And Doug would come home and go, gee, where's dinner? Yeah, I took a 4-hour nap today.
Again.
And it was just, and it wasn't until I started working that I realized that it was just my way, my body and my brain and my everything about just handling it. I found myself, you know, shutting off the TV, just turning on music, and I did so much better. But as soon as that music was off, it was like somebody unplugged me. It was very strange because I'm a go kind of person.
Exactly. Same for me.
And wow, I don't know. And now I find myself, even when I come home, because, you know, you're at work, you got a mask on, you got to be free. Right now, we got to notice that somebody in our office tested positive,
Oh, wait.
but they weren't in the office very often. So now you're worried. And sure enough, I came home and I was like, oh God, I got to set up and I got to do this. And it's in the back of your head. It's like that nagging little thing. So yeah, burnout's huge. It's huge. Can't go out and do what you normally do. You can't go to a show three or 4 nights a week. That was like, I don't know, music's kind of like my antidepressant, live music. And so yeah, burnout's big time in this house, at least for me.
I would say for me, it came in cycles, and it was napping. I mean, I don't mind taking a nap every once in a while, but there were days where it's like, I am not moving from for today. It's not happening. And you know, that was probably my way of dealing with it. Like you said, numbers going up, and you know, not a conversation right now, but even like political climate, it just wears and tears at you. And yeah, so that's the burnout. I think that's where the whole, you know, COVID dilemma thing, you know, probably got me the worst. It's like some days it's just like, all right, I have to give up for today, so I'm just gonna not adult and just lay.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing that you nailed it right on the head there, Frank, that in this household is it's looking for days where we don't have to adult has been the best way to bounce back to some of this.
Right.
Tina, I saw you reaching for the button there. Did you have something to add in?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, my burnout has been kind of different in the way that I'm kind of get my my energy and my healing from being home and being quiet and, you know, taking that nap when I can. Like, my burnout, I think, has been, I think, trying to go back to, you know, normal and normal. You know, where I work, we work with a lot of, you know, very high risk clients. And it's a terrifying, like I think Frank was saying, or no, you, Rick, were saying like that I could be the one to, you know, bring an illness, you know, to these people. You know, I don't necessarily worry about bringing it home. Jimmy and I are both, I mean, we don't want to get sick, but, you know, knock on wood, we're both fairly healthy people. But yeah, working with the clientele that I do, it is, it does weigh, it weighs on me. So every time maybe I see someone, you know, even outside, you know, visiting with neighbors or going to the grocery store or, you know, or whatnot, being somewhere that maybe I was like, oh, I wonder if I got a little too close to that person, or, you know, oh, I wonder, you know, if I could have exposed myself, you know, to the virus in this scenario. So kind of knowing that and kind of getting that burnout of this is exhausting. Afraid to see my dad, who's doing really well, but you know, he's older in age. Jimmy's with his mom every weekend, you know, helping take care of her on the weekends. And, you know, she's older and has some health issues. And, you know, so I think that's kind of where my burnout is like all the worrying of, you know, who could I infect, you know, and my God, you know, what would be the ramifications of, you know, of getting, you know, my loved ones ill.
Yeah,
So,
I think you'll you'll find that being the number one cause for some of that stress is the worrying that you don't want to be the one to do that, and that is so physically draining when all it is and you're not even doing anything. You would just be sitting on the couch, but then it is something where it is so physically draining for that emotional response.
I find, so we've been over whatever 6 months, we've been exposed to people who have been exposed to others. I don't think we've been exposed to anybody directly,
Not that we know of.
not that we're aware of. But it's amazing how even that, that exposure to somebody who is once removed from somebody who is positive, and how for me, man, that just ramps up. My mind just goes a mile a minute because of everybody that I see on a daily basis, and I'm like, oh my God, I hope I didn't catch anything. And and you go through the quarantine and you get tested and you find out that you haven't, you don't have it, and then that stress rescinds. But it's crazy how I don't necessarily consider myself somebody who suffers from anxiety, but when that happens, it's like, oh, if this is what my wife goes through every day, dealing with anxiety, it's like, holy crap, she's a rock star for being able to deal with it, because that's mind numbing for me to see how this pandemic has created that. And I can't imagine living with anxiety on a daily basis and then throwing this on top of it. I can't even fathom.
Yep, totally. And so that's where the learning that and kind of understanding that and kind of stepping back and realizing that. And Trevor, you made the great point of not feeling like it, but then knowing that is helpful, and kind of diving into that and stepping into it is beneficial to alleviate some of that pressure that is inside you.
Totally. Yeah, the burnout is freaking real. I mean, when we first had the baby, I worked the whole time except for the time I was sick, and then when Griffin was born, and I was at home for like 2 weeks, and everyone's sending us food, everyone's on a meal train, so we don't ever have to like do anything for ourselves really. There was a couple of days where maybe I got a couple things done, but a brand new baby, especially him, he was hungry as hell all the time, and when he's hungry, he just screams. So that was kind of frustrating. But the burnout for me happened in a very different way, where I was definitely feeling like the insides on the weekends when I would be home, like we weren't doing anything, and it just felt like we were doing the same movements over and over and over again, like we were supposed to be doing that, like you couldn't just go outside on a walk, like you could, it's right there, you absolutely can, but sometimes I think in a city, especially when you're in an apartment, it feels like being suffocated, like it's not that easy, because there's so many more risks. I walk out my door and there's like a guy walking, there's like 5-10 people walking by without masks. And then, we just recently had a huge brash of violence in Albany Park, where there was a kid shot and killed a block away. And there's bullets flying in our neighborhood literally right now. Like the violence is just taking a new peak around here for, probably a myriad of reasons. So all that stuff is very stressful. I'm not one to just like tap out. I get pissed and I get really angry when I get anxiety, and I can feel it burning inside of me, and I have to like express that energy physically, or else I will explode. So there's a couple of egg crates and milk crates in the alley behind the brewery that have really felt my wrath. I mean, I've
And your
gone up there
stress
and I just scream my ass off, make sure that it's at a time when the staff won't hear me and stuff. But when you go from during the day being a leader during a pandemic and having to tell a 45-year-old person that you have to care about somebody else, to then coming home and being a dad, and then every time I pick up my fucking phone, it's a new terrible thing that just makes me less believe in humanity. I need for you guys. It was music, and for me it's metal. I'm a huge metal head, so I just blast that metal, and I gotta let it out. So yeah, but that's my burnout. I just get pissed.
Yeah, same for me. We had talked about this in Frank when we were recording our Veterans Day episode for Anthologies of Hope, and just music is one of my big reliefs, but metal even more so. So now that I recently got these headphones, since I'm on the phone all day for work and I don't want to be tethered to something, and they just seem to work so I can bounce for whatever device I need. But as long as I can play heavy metal of some sort on whatever I'm listening to, it's great. Whether, it's old school, new school, anything. I have Spotify on every device, and it's just usually it's always playing. And so that is what else kind of keeps me down, and kind of helps to get that adrenaline lower, and kind of keeps the rage subsided, like you were saying, Trevor, where we had just signed up for a gym again. Obviously we're not doing too much at the gym after we had Brooklyn shortly after she was born and everything, but we had just started to sign up for a gym, and then they all get shut down. So now it's like, okay, I just got back into the swing of things and I can't really do much. And similar to you, Trevor, we're in a townhouse where there's a little bit more room, but still looking outside, there's plenty of people, things like that. So not knowing where we can go, what we can do. And so that all started to kind of eat away at it. So, I mean, right on the other side of this backdrop, I set up the yoga mat this morning and did some exercises for the first time and probably since February, just to kind of get going. And it wasn't much, and, nothing to write home about, but it was just something to get some movement going, because I knew that was going to be kind of the start of that boulder, to figure that out. Because if we didn't do any of that, nothing was going to change there. So it's great to hear that all of these stories we're kind of all on the same page, and it's all kind of resounding in the same manner. But one topic that was kind of touched on a little bit, Trevor and Frank, you had mentioned it a little bit, but and especially this is very interesting with some of the older children in here, and even with kind of the juxtaposition of the younger grandchildren. But how have you handled conversations this year regarded to systemic racism, social justice, equality, as Trevor, as you mentioned, some of the new civil rights movement that we're in, the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and with some of the folks that are closer to Wisconsin, the shooting of Jacob Blake, and things like that. How have you managed those conversations in concert with everything that we've talked about so far?
Carefully, depending on the people you're talking to, but at least for me, it's a level of stress that's brought into my household and definitely my surrounding family. So there's concerns as far as since we're talking about parenting. My son definitely took a very strong opinionated support for fighting against systemic racism and things like that. So that added to his stress too, because it's at 20 years old, you still don't know nothing, and it'll just add to that stress of you just trying to find yourself. So there was a little battle when I kind of tell you that there was like a battle with my son, trying to like, hey, well, this is going on, do you see this happening, do you see that happening? He was taking it all in all at the same time, and it was a little too much for someone that might be a little older, and can handle a swarm of stuff hitting your fan, right? And so I guess that's probably where I see it the most, is like my stress comes from just because my household and my family surrounding are direct, I guess directly in the line of fire if it was to continue. So we wanted to clear, and then as far as making sure your kids, and even if you're young, little babies even, who knows where you're going to be 5 or 10 years down the road. We might still be having this fight. I'm hoping that we not, but hopefully we solve it a lot quicker than it was, remedied in the past. Let's just put it that way.
With 6 children, that means 6 different personalities that we have. And like, my daughter is married to a police officer, so my dialect with her is so much different than my dialect, let's say, with our youngest daughter, who is very much an activist for peace. So it's just different. It's very strange. But we take the chance to talk about what's going on in our world, and we take the chance to talk about what they can do to help calm things down and make things a little bit easier for everyone, not just someone of color, but that they have to stop and look as children that came kind of from a privileged life. They had parents that worked and they had a house over the, they had a nice house and the chance for an education. Yeah, systemic racism and the talk about, voting, especially with 4 daughters. I constantly remind them that many women had to go through hell so that we have the right to vote. And if they don't agree with politics, at least look at your local government and change it there, because local government has to change systemic racism. And having a son who's a firefighter and a paramedic, it's just like, I don't know how to explain it. He's a kid who grew up in a house that there's no racism, and all of a sudden he's kind of a racist. And you have to kind of tap him down a little bit and remind him that he's not at work. So even with adult children, it's the learning curve is still there. And with how the world is right now, our learning curve is huge and we have a lot to talk about. But engaging our children and asking them to do what they think is fair is really helping.
Harry, you said your son was a firefighter?
Right. My son is a firefighter in a suburb outside of Chicago. And
Yeah.
before that, he was a paramedic in a really financially depressed area that had a lot of drugs and shooting. And I hate to say this, but I think it kind of hardened him as to just leave them be. They'll all kill each other. And that's not how he was raised. So it's really a challenge for a mom.
Well, I'll kind of just give you some things that especially we talk about in Project Red Team a few times, and I'm sure Rick and anybody that's ever been in the military, you kind of, not to say that you're thinking you're racist when you're in, because of the things you're saying and the language you're using, and maybe the things that you do when you're in these weird spots, but you definitely come back with maybe a chip on your shoulder. At least I know I did when I came back. So, the job, and I know a lot of cops say that, the job can change you.
Oh.
But, sooner or later, you have to be able to step outside that box and say, I'm not right. It shouldn't be changing me. I should be, sticking to my guns and my own personality. And
Right.
it's one of those things, like I guess you can say a stigma kind of thing, where, they feel that, at least from my point of view, I felt like I had to just be in that group,
Yeah.
because that's just the way it was,
Yeah.
and that's, I hear that in movies now and a lot of, documentaries. Well, that's just the way it is. Right. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to be. Right. So.
And
The way it was.
yeah. The
Yeah,
other
right.
part is,
The way it was. Times are changing, people are changing, and we have to change with it.
Exactly.
my children, I'm a very open-minded and non-racist person, but unfortunately my ex-husband is just the opposite. And that's one of the reasons he's my ex-husband. So they hear that racism when they spend time with their dad. And even though they're adults, it's something that was while they were growing up. And it's a really hard thing for us to take and change. My son in Columbia is not. And I think it was because he was the closest to my oldest boy, who is no longer with us because he completed suicide. But my youngest son spent a lot of time with him. And because of that, he views the world a lot differently. My son lived in Garfield Park for a long time, and he was a 6'4", blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid out there juggling, trying to make a difference in his neighborhood by engaging people to stop systemic racism. And I think it rubbed off on him. But Doug's girls are very much, they have a different point of view. They were raised different. Both parents instilled in them the beauty in each person. So I just have to work a little harder with mine to get them over that hump. And like I said, my daughter's married to a police officer, and their views are much different. And I'm just worried that it's going to rub off on my 15-year-old grandson. I see it already happening. So that's another reason to be a big presence. But yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult right now, but it's a great time to engage your kids to make a difference in the world they live in. If anything, just by voting.
Trevor, you had mentioned some of this as far as working with folks at the brewery, but and just some of the language that you use there. But does it seem like you have a kind of parental role in some of this conversation here, like you were saying, as far as even with politics or some of the civil rights notion of that, and kind of being both a leader but also a peer, and in some of this to kind of guide some of this, or to know that there's many facets to this, as far as the role you're playing, where you're saying you're doing this and this and this and this and wearing, you know, a dozen hats at the same time. How have you handled that at the brewery, and then just in your kind of personal life to step back from that?
Yeah, at work, you know, we had a Zoom before we opened back up, and that obviously came up, and the staff wanted to know what we're doing, and they brought up some like kind of newer things that we as a business could do, that were opportunities, and I said, of course, we can put it on the table. You know, I want to get this business open. I had to pivot so many times that my neck was starting to like almost break off my head. You know, it was just so much. But when we started having that conversation, we had already had kind of an idea and plan, and like before even there's this whole beer around the Black Lives Matter called Black is Beautiful. If you see these beers, it's awesome. These breweries are basically all going to be donating money to some kind of Black-owned charity, and I really wanted to do that, and I immediately had a staff member, my only Black staff member, who actually is very involved with Hope for the Day, come up to me, and he basically said, I have to do something. And I said, what do you want to do? He's like, I want to do a beer. I was like, yep. You know, I was like, that was my opportunity to kind of step aside and just, you know, let him do his thing and be able to express himself, because he had to be feeling frustrated as hell. And I'm like, well, I got some resources. Who do you want to donate to? What are we doing? And that was pretty much that. We got the beer released. It was his name. He wanted it to be about unity. It was called All for One, One for All. Apparently the author of the Three Musketeers was a Black person, and he really connected with that unity vibe. And you know, we had some people be like, is OIB trying to say all lives matter? And it's just like, holy shit, I'm not even engaged with that. It's like, no, we're donating the proceeds to my block, my hood, my city. But it's like, you know, it becomes difficult, because I think there's a lot of people who are frustrated and they want us to do so much more, and of course I want to do more, and it's a balance, right? So I've always kind of show people what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and try to do it in as positive way as possible. But it's tough, because everyone, I think, is as pissed off and angry as I tend to get sometimes. And in a world where you just realize that no one knows what the fuck they're doing, that's a really scary time. I don't know if you guys had that vibe when this whole thing went down, but the minute that the pandemic happened and things started falling apart, I was like, oh, no one's got a hold of this thing at all. We're all on our own.
Absolutely.
And then you see all these this police brutality, these killings, and then you see the messages and how they're getting misconstrued, and how the Blue Lives Matter movement, you know, was an answer to the Black Lives Matter movement, as a way of kind of being like, fuck you, Blue Lives Matter, but now my friends who are like really woke are in this school and everything's a mess. So I can't imagine being a kid. I can't imagine being one of my staff members who have to like serve people who aren't listening. It's a very scary world, but I keep on telling everyone this, and this is something I hope to instill in my son, is that empathy can go a ton of ways. Empathy doesn't just go to people who maybe have less than you, or maybe that to people that you're leading. It can go to the people who are in leadership and have to make really hard decisions. It can go to people that maybe have a higher station in life. You can be empathetic with anyone at any moment for whatever they're doing and still disagree with them. But I think that's kind of what I've been trying to preach more than anything else, is people come to me with anger. I can't control the message coming in. I can only control the message coming out. And I just try to take whatever that shit is that they give me, recycle it, give it back to them in a really positive way. And it makes me feel terrible sometimes, because then I'm full of all this toxic bullshit, but then, you know, I go beat the shit out of some egg crates. So, yeah.
That's a good way to put that and kind of wrap that all up.
Bravo.
Tina and Jimmy, did you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I actually wanted to say this is a topic we've talked about probably most of our kids' lives. Growing up in a tiny little farm town that tends to be more conservative than maybe surrounding areas. Jimmy and I both, I would say, have very open views on different issues. But as far as racism goes, as far as homophobia goes, those types of issues we've talked with our kids about from the time they were young, because we wanted to make sure that growing up in this environment that they weren't missing something or they weren't learning something that we didn't believe in. And with Henry going to school down south, that sort of brought it to another level. Being in North Carolina, he said it is very different down there. And he loves a lot of it, a lot of the kind of Southern culture down there, but it is even more different than, our little conservative town. So we've had conversations, but I have to say, I am so hopeful. Just seeing the social media of the kids that are really on the cusp of adulthood in our area, and how passionate they are about these issues and how well informed they are. And, the kids, high school and college age kids in our town, have they've started marches and different demonstrations. I have to say, I am really pleasantly surprised and very hopeful with this generation, growing up, because I think that they're going to change the world. We can instill what we can in our kids, and now we've been saying this the whole hour. It's their time to shine, and I feel like they're stepping up and they're doing it, and it's a pretty awesome thing to see.
That's good to hear.
When we talk to young kids, I always tell them that one of the reasons I'm letting them know as a stranger just how wonderful they are and the potentials that they have. Because they're going to they will be my voice when I'm too old to have a voice. And this generation coming up is filled with activism and empathy and support and kindness, and they're a little flawed. And I think that I would rather have that as a leader, somebody who understands the struggle of other people, than somebody who just understands government. And they get it. You see that little light go on, that, wow, I can make a difference in 20 years if I keep on this path. And like you said, it's so wonderful to see how active they are across the board in all kinds of matters, not just, Black Lives Matter or racism, but, you see how the death of a Supreme Court justice, and how they're all like, oh my God, this woman was such a great leader. I need to be like that. It's wonderful to see that younger generation doing that. So that means that their parents are making a difference by showing them and by enforcing it. And it does, it really gives me hope. So Tina, I'm like you, I'm so impressed by how the young kids are stepping up and being a voice.
And they're actually remembering what they learned in high school called the Constitution, and find out what's going on in this country and who rules and how this person gets appointed and how this person. So it's really good to see the young people finally step up, because it's good that they're all being active. But you know what, guys? Put the phone down, go to the polls.
Yeah.
Put the phone down. You can talk all the shit you want. You can call your Instagram, you can call your Facebook and all this and that, and hashtag everybody. But if you're sitting on your ass on November 3rd, you ain't doing nothing to help anybody out.
Yeah. Well, and I see a lot of kids doing things like they're starting food drives and they're doing clothing drives. And I don't know, I see young kids doing things like they're helping out with their families by being the paper girl. So instead of getting an allowance from their parents who maybe aren't working as much, they're working towards something. So it's just changing from when my children were the young age of beginning to be an adult I see the kids now, and it's just different because our world is different and they're engaged more.
Who's our
And that-
state
And that's so
representative?
great. I love seeing that they're taking that advantage and
That's awesome.
stepping
And
up.
I'll start to wrap it up, but I'll give everybody some time for some closing thoughts here. But just my takeaway is I took some notes from everything you were saying, Mary, but then also what Trevor just said as far as empathy can go in both directions or in many directions. And so for some of that, it's the empathy, it's the grace for yourself and for somebody else, and then it's the perspective. I mean, you get a completely different perspective of the pandemic here if you're coming back from Colombia, for instance,
Mhm.
and then being able to go back there from here. Or I live a stone's throw from Trevor's brewery now, but I lived for 12 years in North Carolina, so I know some of the difference there between the city here or the rural area here and the rural area there and the cities there, and kind of seeing that perspective and how to process some of the things differently. So it ends up for me just going through the waves, like Frank said, as far as coming and going. And I was pretty much in a paralysis very early on, being overwhelmed with everything going virtual, where I worked remotely to begin with, and now everything is virtual. So I didn't have 720 hours in a day to do all the stuff that was now virtual all at the same time. So it took me some time to breathe, to figure that out, to balance things with a kiddo who at the beginning of the pandemic was a wiggle monster like Griff is, but then now literally she's running full speed around the house. So just in that time, that's the difference. Needing to adapt, we converted our dining room into literally a jungle gym because we drove out to St. Charles and got a little Tykes play set, and now that is inside here because we know winter's coming. To kind of borrow Trevor's perspective there, and there we're not going to be able to go many places. So it's like now she's crawling up a slide where our dining room table used to be, and so it's all about setting ourselves up for that success. Either steps at a time, leaps, jumps, bounds, whatever it is, but it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. And so the more we can base ourselves around some of that mentality, it definitely helps us and kind of builds up some of that armor that we have, so that the things that were shaking our bottle kind of bounce off us now and kind of definitely help. So I'll turn it over to everybody here to give some closing thoughts, and then we'll close it up and go home for the night. So, or stay home and go do something else. So Mary, I'll start with you, and then I'll go around clockwise on my screen for it, and we'll wrap it up.
I think the biggest thing in today's culture, dealing with children and what's happening in our world and keeping them balanced, because you don't want to overwhelm them. They don't have the life experiences that their parents have. My children definitely don't have the life experience that I have, but I do remind them that this is a really important time that they can make a difference, and not just in their lives, but in other people's lives. And whether that's bringing somebody some food, or reminding somebody when they're shopping they need to put their mask on because it's a mandate, or making time for self-care. My daughter has three children at home, and she's now a kindergarten teacher and a sophomore and a high school teacher, and that's not good. But you have to remind yourself that you need self-care. Take a bubble bath, listen to some music, go for a walk, because you have to rely on yourself a lot in here, because we don't have the ability of, going down the street and having a cup of coffee or a beer with a friend like we did before. But the biggest thing I remind my children, and I remind everybody, and is that we just need to be kinder and nicer. Don't take a look at what's happening in politics, because it's definitely not kind and it's definitely not nice. But you need to be kinder and nicer. You need to be an example in this world, because you can change the world one day at a time by your actions. We will get through this. Life will return. It'll just be a little different, and we'll have a lot of experience for our adult tools, our tool belt, to go forward.
I say just keep checking up on people, utilize the social networks, utilize anything you can. FaceTime people, call them up, text them. Everybody needs to say hello to someone every once in a while.
Yeah.
Promote conversation. How you guys doing? And it doesn't have to be this month, every day is Suicide Prevention Day in our lives. We need to converse with people more.
Yeah.
How you guys doing? What's going on? Let me show you this really cool, weird filter that I got. It makes my nose look really big, and I'm looking like the guy from, reach out to people, touch their soul, touch their heart. They'll touch you back.
Excellent. Frank?
I think I'm going to wrap it up just saying I think I've learned something from everybody on this panel today, and a great opportunity to be here. So I know anybody that definitely tuned in heard some very good recommendations on maybe how to, vent that pressure or, see how other people dealt with their home lives during these times, and especially with their children and grandchildren or so forth and so on. So I just want to appreciate it, and thanks for everybody putting in their 2 cents. It was a good time.
All right.
Awesome. Trevor, you're up next.
Yeah, man. Amazing as like a new dad to hear people have been parents, and it breaks my heart to hear about your losses. My heart really goes out to you guys. I love my son so much, so that was just gut wrenching. But getting everyone's perspectives is absolutely amazing. And I'll just say this much, like I've been pretty obsessed with just how much influence social media has on everyone, and specifically kids. And back in the day, we had the advantage of reading a newspaper, getting a lot of different opinions, a lot of different thoughts. And now with the way the algorithms work, we're getting very specific news for everybody. So that's kind of what's happening, I think, in a big way, since so many people get their news that way. It's literally tearing us apart because we're not getting unbiased news, and we're unfriending people all the time. And I think what we need to do more than anything else right now is teach people to listen and disarm people by listening to them. And that's hard to do when they're also threatening your life by not putting on a mask. But once they do that, and then being like, what's going on? What's got you frustrated? And still being to activate that level of empathy, even among so much of your own anger, is going to be so important, because they'll talk if you're willing to listen. And I think that's something I really want to instill in my kid, is to disarm people with compassion.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great takeaway. I'm definitely writing that one down. Tina and Jimmy, any final closing thoughts there? Still muted?
Yeah, we're muted.
There
There we
you
go.
There we go. Life is so much more complicated when you have 3 dogs in your lap.
My dog was like taking my arm away, so I couldn't unmute us.
We call them dog blankets.
Yeah, that's what I have right now. So yeah, I also wanted to say, like, I'm so honored to be included on this panel. Honored as always to be connected with Hope for the Day. Like Frank said, I've learned, from what everybody has said. What a cool group of people they've collected here. I think my closing thoughts are inclusivity. We are all part of the human race. We're all on the same damn team. Like, I think that's just what I keep trying to tell people. And I know, when my daughter was young, she didn't always feel part of the team, or she didn't always feel included. And I know how hurtful that can be, as a young person. And I think, as people grow into adults, that hurt can be expressed in many different ways that are not healthy and that are actually harmful to other people. So our daughter was also one of the kindest, most forgiving creatures, humans I've ever met. That's part of our foundation's mission is the be kind. So thank you for bringing that up, Mary. So yeah, being kind and including people. The empathy is huge, Trevor. Like, that's, everyone deserves that. So I even, I have my political ideas, and I really try to have empathy for the other side, because I don't know why they have their thoughts and their ideas. And it's something I always try to remind myself, that I don't know what people are going through. I don't know what they've been through. It's just a good rule to be kind, have empathy, and include people whenever you can. And I think you always can.
Yeah, and like everyone's saying, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. And one of the things that I'm taking away is, you know, in today's craziness of everything that's going on, I'm constantly reminded that everybody has an opinion, and that's for me, that's good. I listen. I have on my radio. I have you know political stations on the radio, right? But I have every every segment on there, and I try to, when I drive home, I try to listen to each radio station. Some I agree with, the others I don't necessarily agree with, but I want to still listen, because I think it's so important that everyone's being heard. And I think where we get lost is when it's more important for us to be right than to be heard or to listen. And I think a lot of times that's where we're at right now, and so much anger bubbles out because people feel that they have to be right, and it's okay for me. It's okay for everybody to have a different opinion, and I hope that we can get to be more civil and listen more and maybe learn more, from everybody, and hopefully that gets us to a better place eventually. So thanks for everyone giving your opinions, and Rick, thanks for creating an environment where we all felt safe enough to be able to share our stories. I think that's just so important. People who feel safe to be who they are and share and feel heard.
They had to box you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, and I want to thank all of you. Trevor, Frank, Doug, Mary, Jimmy, Tina. We weren't able to have Ryan Shannon from our Project Red team join us tonight. He was feeling a little under the weather, so we missed out on him. But thank you all for coming and sharing. And as I said in the intro, this was a kind of a good juxtaposition in ages of children, and then parenting and experiences. And so I think between last week and this week, we really got a good 360-degree view of what is parenting in 2020, what is living in 2020, and the microcosm for all of the individual experiences that we have, as well as just the collective experiences as well. So I'd like to thank all of our listeners joining us for taking the time to be a part of the overlooked conversation of parenting and the role of a parent as an individual. And it's been hammered home in some of your closing thoughts that we don't really know where some of those people are coming from in any regard, as far as just outside of our own personal experience. So being able to listen to some of the best and worst of parenting and grandparenting in 2020 so far has been really beneficial for me, and I'm sure it has been for our guests. I'd like to invite everyone to join Hope for the Day on October 8th of this upcoming year from 9 to 2:30 in the afternoon. That's Central Time, for the Conversation Summit 2020. It's free attendance. It's a virtual event. You can attend free with a RSVP over at conversationsummit.com. With some inside information on what we've got going on for this year. It's going to be an excellent event. We were able to have it in person last year at the UIC Forum in Chicago. This year it's going virtual, but the conversation, the programming, and all the interaction that we're doing there dovetails perfectly with everything we talked about this week, everything we talked about last week, and all the work that Mary, that you've mentioned, and then Tina, you've mentioned, as far as the separate communications, and Jimmy, the work that you do in some of those groups there too. So it's all about continuing that conversation. And so that's a great next step for our audience that tunes in here weekly and is looking for a bigger engagement with some of the local youth oriented mental health services and suicide prevention campaigns as well there. So I also want to make sure I thank the production team, because Conversations Cafe would not be able to be brought to you without the amazing production and planning crew that we do have with our usual guest here, Carl Evans, Mike Van Opel, as folks have mentioned here, who congratulations to Mike, who recently was married this week, hence why he's not here. Rightfully so. Vicky Sisnet, Angel Overton, and Maisie, who are actually out working one of the kind of the first tabled events that Hope for the Day has had since the shutdown began. So we're starting to kind of get back out into the community again to be that person to person connection, even if it is just setting up a table and standing back while people interact with some resources. It's still there, being present and still kind of making that connection. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us this week. You can catch us here every week at conversationscafe.org, 6 p.m. Thursday Central Time. If you don't like redirects, you can always, like, subscribe, and hit the alerts on both Facebook and YouTube to get alerted when we do go live. I know I get them on all the platforms, so I'm sure many people here do as well. But we'll close it up and wrap it up tonight. So again, thank you everyone here. It's been amazing. I took notes and more timestamps to come back to this to check on some of the amazing conversation that we had. But we're going to close it out with a short PSA about the Stigma Swear Jar campaign that Hope for the Day is running for Suicide Prevention Month, and how you can get involved with that. So everyone have a wonderful night, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mental health stigma forces us to be silent. This September, for Suicide Prevention Month, Hope for the Day invites you to tell stigma how you really feel.
Kiss my ass, Stigma.
F you, Stigma.
Stigma is yucky.
The truth is, stigma looks different for each of us. Go to stigmaswearjar.com and tell stigma how you really feel. Donate and support suicide prevention and share your story.
Join us at stigmaswearjar.com.
The more we talk about mental health, the more we realize we're not alone.